Hey, good morning. It's Pastor Jeff with your Sunday morning message. Thank you so much for tuning in with us here at Freedom Church. I want to start out by asking you a question. What is worth more, this penny or this $100 bill? It's not a trick question, so don't read too far into it. I'm willing to bet some of you watching this thought to themselves, the penny. Even though this is worth 10,000 pennies, it's not even close in comparison. But someone thought to themselves, that copper, that fake copper that the penny's made with, that would be worth more than the paper and the ink that $100 bill is printed on. Why would they go there? Why would they take the obvious answer and change it? Because we are programmed by the world to believe that if an answer is too obvious, it must be the opposite. We doubt ourselves because we value being right over knowing what we know to be true. The truth is, one has been assigned more worth, even though neither is actually worth more outside of this. If I handed you this piece of paper without any ink on it, you just throw it in the trash. If I handed you this amount of copper with no print on it, you would just throw it to the side. They are assigned value that they would not have without that assignment. You are assigned value that you would not have without your assignment. If you follow me on social media, I apologize for the past few weeks. I'm a guy who never takes time off from work. I miss one Sunday a year at the church, and usually I'm working when everyone else is on trips and playing. Last week and the week before and this coming week were a complete exception. So I hope you haven't blocked me. One of the things I've learned about my race trip to Bristol is that every year I make it about the racing, because after all, I am a racer and it is a race that I'm going to. This year I squeezed fireworks downtown in with the girls on Thursday night. So I drove through the night to get to Bristol. I got there at 7:30 a.m., left around 11 p.m., got there at 7:30 a.m. I was on the track by 8:45 a.m., and we raced until curfew at 1 a.m. that day. We did get a rain shower that afternoon that meant a nice long daytime nap for me, which is very rare. I raced Saturday, I preached Sunday, and I raced until after dark on Sunday, and then drove through the night back to St. Augustine, getting home around 7 a.m., and sleeping until about 11 a.m. Then I got to play with my grandson for several hours. That sounds busy, but here's what happens when you get to do what you love, which is drag racing and preach. I got to do both of those in the mountains. When you do the things that you love in a surrounding like mountains, you become more self-aware. That sounds kind of backwards, I know, but I'll explain it farther in today's message. The more I am in awe and wonder of God, the more I am in awe of myself and my own worth in the most humbly healthy of ways. How could that be? I believe it's because we have misdiagnosed our primary problem as humans. As long as we keep the emphasis on us instead of on a higher vision, we will take small comfort from discussions of our identity, and we will see very little lasting change. I believe our primary problem as Christians is not that we lack self-worth, it's that we lack awe of God. Research shows that when humans experience awe, which would be wonderment at a redwood or a rainbow, at mountains or ocean sunrises, at Rembrandt or Beethoven, we become less individualistic, less self-focused, less materialistic, and more connected to the people around us. When I do the things that I love, I long to share it with the people that I love. And I rarely get that opportunity. That's the first thought in my head. Man, I wish I could share this with my loved ones. I did a wedding on the beach this morning during the sunrise. And all I could think was, I wish I could share this with my loved ones, as I sat and marveled at something far greater than myself. At first, this sounds counterintuitive, but if we examine it, it begins to sound a lot like the greatest commandment. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your mind. And love your neighbor as yourself. Meaning, love God. Sit in awe of God, of all that he is, all that he will be, all that he continues to be, all of his promises, and all that he has done for us. And pretty soon, you'll love yourself. And when you love yourself, you'll see your self-worth as great enough to go and to love others. Awe helps us worry less about self-worth by turning our eyes first to God and then to others. It also establishes our self-worth in the best possible way. We understand both our insignificance within creation and our significance to our Creator. But just like a kid on an iPad riding through the mountains during a sunrise or a sunset, we can miss majesty when it is right in front of us. We need true self-awareness. We studied Psalm 139 for a few weeks a while back, and we're familiar with verse 14. Lord, I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. It's used as a rally cry for self-worth, but the truth is it wasn't that at all in the original context. It's harder to hear it that way when we consider who wrote it. Imagine the warrior, King David, writing to give himself a pep talk about his appearance or his self-worth. No, Psalm 139:14 is not written to help us feel significant. We have to zoom out and consider the entire psalm to see this, the same way we have to zoom out from ourselves and see all of God's creation to see this. Without question, the subject of Psalm 139 is not us at all. It's rather than a self-reflection on me, being fearfully and wonderfully made, it's an extended celebration of God, fearfully and wonderfully creating us. Awe, A-W-E, yields self-forgetfulness. When we emphasize self-awareness, we omit self-forgetfulness. We've missed the mark. You can assure me that I am God's poem, that I am God's masterpiece. You can tell me that I stir the heart of God, that I am sung over and delighted in, that I am beautiful in his eyes, that I am set apart for a sacred purpose. You can tell me all these things, and you should, but I cannot hear you telling me who I am or what I am until I fully appreciate the great I am. There can be no true self-awareness apart from right, reverent awe of God. Bob Goff puts it this way: when you take away what you are actually known for, what's left is who you actually are. When you take away whatever you have done, whatever you do, that is how people refer to you, when you take that away, all that's left is the person God made, you. Finding our identity in the wrong places is a symptom of succumbing to the fear of man. We measure ourselves by a human standard instead of by a divine one, by the solution to the fear of man. But the solution to the fear of man is not repeated assurances that we are loved and accepted by God. It is a fear of God. It's a healthy fear. So bear with me. Psalm 147:11 says, he delights in those who fear him. And I believe John Piper says it best. He says, God is most glorified in us when we are most satisfied in him. God delights when you sit and you know who he truly is, when you fear all that he is. Psalm 25:14 says, his friendship is for those who fear him. Listen, we all have that friend that we are afraid of, mostly because they're a little crazy, or maybe they're a lot crazy, and you're always afraid of what they may do or what they may say. This is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about finding a relationship inside of our awe and our respect, for the God, the creator, and the maker of all things. Psalm 31:19 tells us his goodness is stored up for those who fear him. To understand God's goodness, his greatness, to have it poured out on us, you got to sit in awe of who he is. Wisdom begins with the fear of the Lord. Psalm 111:10. This one's more about pecking order. We cannot fully appreciate anyone or any amount of knowledge without fully respecting just how all-knowing God is. There was a commercial on TV for a while where someone downloaded a new fast internet. This is several years ago. It was nowhere near as fast as we are now. You remember the days of dial-up where you get the do-do-do-do-do, the fax machine sound, and you wait and you wait and you wait, and then finally, and if you want to upload a picture or a video, forget about it. Now we have phones that are twice as fast, 10 times faster than that. But this guy has downloaded the new internet, whatever it may be, the new web browser, and he's bragging, and he's in there surfing, and his wife says, "Hey, honey, I thought you were in there surfing the internet." And he says, "I've finished it." Imagine finishing the internet. Imagine thinking about the catalogs of knowledge you would have if you looked at everything on the internet. Now think about God's knowledge. We cannot fathom even 1% of all that God knows. And according to Proverbs 16:6, we can only turn away from our sin by the fear of the Lord. I can tell you, I have an unhealthy relationship with sin. I sin, I make mistakes, but this is an ingrained thing in me that I've worked so hard in my faith, and I've just about outgrown it, but every now and then I'll fall back to it. Because I used to measure out all of the time my sins. I would measure it out with this question: will this sin damage my relationship with Jesus? That's how I measured everything. And the answer is usually yes. But the answer is also no. Sometimes we ask ourselves, does God even see us? You're in the middle of something, you're going, God, can you even see what I am walking through? Am I significant enough that I am a blip on your radar? Psalm 33:18 says, the eye of the Lord is on those who fear him. I remember going to a baseball camp. It was Dave Barnett's baseball camp here in town, and I was one of his original campers. I went to his very first camps. And I remember going to that camp, and he would bring in professional baseball players and professional baseball scouts. And this is comical to talk about in my current condition with my eyes. They would put us through all types of drills and watch everything we did. And listen, I hit as well as most of the kids there. I threw as well, and I fielded as well. I was probably in the middle of the pack, to be completely honest with you, maybe a little above the middle. But then they brought out this little handheld thing. It was a little machine. And it looked like a smartphone does now, but keep in mind this was in the 90s, early 90s. You had to stare at it. And it was a blank screen. And a number on the screen would flash and flash right out. It would go just like that. And it would be on for a 1/10 of a second. And each player at that camp looked at that machine and failed. Some tried to guess, some got it kind of close. But they gave it to me, and I read it to them in real time. Scout's name was Preston Douglas. I even ended up getting a Christmas card from him later that year. He was a professional scout for the Chicago White Sox. He reset the machine thinking it was a fluke. I read it to him perfectly again. And then we did it a third time with a longer number, and I read it right back to him. He looked at me, and he told me, he said, Jeff, son, half of professional baseball players, half of the guys in the major leagues can't pass that test. And he said, I'm going to have my eye on you, son. I had to do something at that camp that no one else could do for that scout to have his eye on me. I'd done nothing to stand out. I wasn't fast. I wasn't strong. I wasn't big. I was just average. But that, reading those numbers, seeing, made me stand out. And he said, I'm going to have my eye on you. Meanwhile, for God to have his eye on me, all I have to do is sit with my eyes on him. And if I sit with my eyes on him, I will fear him. I will be in awe of him. And I will become more self-aware. Psalm 103:11 says, his steadfast love is for those who fear him. The fear of the Lord is linked to contentment, confidence, blessing, spiritual safety, and to praise and to adoration. Let me attempt to explain this fear thing to you. Because all our lives, we have been taught that fear is bad. Fear is weakness. Fear is what fuels a lot of mental health problems in today's world. The unhealthy version of fear of God will make us afraid to be in God's presence. That's a fear based on our mistakes, our sins, and our self-worth. We want nothing to do with God because we feel less worthy of being in his presence. It's similar to when as a kid, you get into big trouble somewhere. And the biggest fear is having to go home and face mom and dad. A healthy fear of God will cause you to be afraid to not be in his presence. This is the fear the psalmist is speaking of. When you begin to fully appreciate and sit in awe of how powerful, how mighty, how loving, and how great God truly is. We must fight fear with fear. We cease offering reverence and awe to a human standard by instead offering it to God. This is worship. And when we worship the Lord in splendor of holiness, and interesting things happen. We do discover our true identity. I dare you to sit and watch a sunrise over the ocean, or sit on a mountaintop and see yourself as huge. It's not possible. It actually does the opposite. I think back to the first time I flew on an airplane. I was nervous just because of the unknown. But as a drag racer, that takeoff was perfect for me. Getting sit back in the seat, taking off, that launch, man, it was it. And as we settled into the air early on, I was glued to the window and just seeing things that seemed huge look so small put a lot of perspective into life for me. Passing over things like baseball stadiums and coliseums. As we flew into Atlanta, they almost looked fake. Kind of like the Peter Pan ride at Disney. They have this little lit cityscape below and you see little lights going by and it looks like a city with cars driving along to give you the illusion that you are flying way up in the air with Peter Pan. Here's the simple truth. Don't tell me who I am until you have caused me to gaze in awe, in fear, and in wonder of the great I am. Here's how Brené Brown puts it. Don't walk through life looking for evidence that you don't belong, because you will always find it. Don't walk through the world looking for evidence that you're not enough, because you are always going to find it. Our worth and our belonging are not negotiated with other people. We carry our worth and our belonging inside of our hearts. We have to walk through life telling ourselves, I know who I am. And I will not negotiate that with anyone. Because if I negotiate with the world for my worth, for my belonging, I then belong to the world. And that is a betrayal we cannot allow ourselves to make. Your self-worth is wrapped up in the greatness of God, not in the weakness of man. Have a great day and God bless.